Welcome everyone to today's, or this evening's rather, inaugural webinar in this five-part series. My name is Michael Ogia. I am a Belgrade-based consultant, editor, and researcher who has worked in the internet governance and digital policy sector since 2015. And I have more than a decade of professional experience in conflict resolution, journalism and media, policy and development across 5 countries, including the United States, Lebanon, India, Turkey, and Serbia. I will be your host throughout this series of webinars, which is brought to you by the E-commerce Association of Georgia, and with much thanks to the generous support of the USAID Economic Development, Governance, and Enterprise Growth Project, also known as EDGE, the USAID Zarda activity in Georgia, and the USAID Economic Security Program. Today's webinar will introduce you to the fundamentals of expanding and launching an e-commerce business abroad. So let's go ahead and get to why everyone is here. Let's get to the meat of it. In today's webinar, we will be talking about how to establish and launch cross-border e-commerce business. Now, COVID-19 has challenged many businesses, many of which I'm sure you can relate to, but especially micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises across the 6 countries of the Eastern Partnership, including Armenia, Azerbaijan, Belarus, Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine. But of course, this is a phenomenon that is relevant to pretty much throughout the world now. Now, while various sectors of the economy are suffering significant and disproportionate losses due to the pandemic, e-commerce has emerged as a key pillar to bounce back and allow for businesses' survival. As the OECD, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, recently noted in a policy brief that they released in October, the COVID-19 crisis is accelerating an expansion of e-commerce towards new firms, customers, and types of products, likely involving a long-term shift of e-commerce transactions from luxury goods and services to everyday necessities, as well as having a long-lasting effect on e-commerce as a whole. And in case anybody is interested in that report, you can, please, I encourage you to check it out at your own leisure. And as domestic e-commerce markets have started growing, there is significant opportunity to reach global consumers who tend to spend more on goods and services, especially when they can save by having to go out and can shop from the convenience of their home or office. In today's webinar, we are being joined by 2 really wonderful speakers, 2 really wonderful individuals. Andy Hooper, who is the CEO of Global E-commerce Experts, who will be speaking about secrets of launching basically the secrets to launching cross-border online sales. He'll be enlightening us to his experience. And in his role at the company, Andy has advised thousands of companies outside of the EU how to launch their sales globally. I will expand a little bit more on Andy's profile when we get there. And also, joining us a little bit later in the webinar will be Ekaterina Ramishvili, founder of Kisa Bags, who will share her story about launching her business from Georgia. And I have to say, one of the things I'm so excited about being here is not just the topic itself, but I have a very, very special place in my heart for the Caucasus, for Georgia, and so especially so to be able to be here and moderate this is really a great honor. Just some housekeeping rules before we get to the next part of our segment. As an attendee of this webinar, you will be able to watch and listen to the speakers, but you will not have control over your video and microphone as per the webinar format. Please ask any questions that you have in the Q&A section. The Q&A section can be reached, again, on the bottom bar of toolbar of the Zoom platform. And we will group them and address them to speakers at the end of their presentation. You can also share messages in the chat box. Just make sure, though, that before sending a message, you select all panelists and attendees so that everyone can see your message. Otherwise, your message will only be seen by the panelists. And lastly, we will also run a short poll before the end of the webinar. So please be sure to fill it in. In case you have any other questions, you can always, you can always kind of either raise your hand through the participants tab on the bottom, which has the raise hand feature, or you can type into the chat. Our technical team is led today by Georgi, who is already in the chat. He just said hello to everyone. So in case you have any problems, please let us know. With that said, and before we proceed to the speakers, I'm so sorry to tease everybody and make you wait. We just have a very short video intervention from Peter Wiebler, who is a mission director at the USAID, who is a mission director for USAID for the Caucasus.
Hello, everyone. As we all know, the COVID-19 pandemic is primarily a public health problem, but we also all know that it's had massive economic impact in Georgia, the region, and all over the world. So we know at USAID that business owners like yourselves face a large challenge, and that's how to continue to serve your customers under pandemic conditions, which are continuing and extending today here in Georgia. So we've seen a big shift globally in online sales and purchases since the pandemic hit. There was already an increase in online sales and in e-commerce before COVID-19, but what we've seen is COVID-19 has accelerated that growth. And so as a result, because of that acceleration since 2020, USAID has been helping private businesses integrate e-commerce solutions into their business models. So e-commerce helps businesses stay connected with customers even during a lockdown. And looking forward, e-commerce can help businesses of all sizes, whether they're micro businesses to the largest companies, place their products in more lucrative markets, both at home here in Georgia and abroad. I'm pleased that all of you private sector representatives from 6 different countries are participating in this webinar series. And over the next couple of weeks, you're going to learn about how to use e-commerce to reach new customers and to contribute to economic growth in all of your individual countries. This webinar series is being implemented by the Georgian E-Commerce Association, which is a key USAID partner that's supporting the economic recovery here from COVID, and it's helping to lay the groundwork for more sustainable, innovation-driven growth in the future. The series is also made possible by USAID's EDGE program, which, as you all know, is a regional activity in Eastern Europe that supports economic growth by building cross-border connections between businesses all around Europe and Eurasia. So that initiative is supported by a collaboration between the USAID Economic Security Program and USAID ZERDA program, which are 2 of our key programs here in the Georgia mission. It's an excellent example of USAID program cooperation, both within the Georgia mission, as also with our regional programs, which are managed out of Washington. So looking ahead, not only Georgia's economic future, but the economic future of the broader region depends on the private sector building strong cross-border connections. And in fact, we've seen time and time again all around the world that economic development and also peace, reconciliation, and security are strengthened where economic cooperation grows. So I hope that's an important lesson that we can all take forward. I wish you all the best in these seminars and webinars, and I hope that your businesses will grow online and eventually back in the real world when we start to come out from the pandemic. So good luck to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Georgi. And you know, it's funny that he ended it by saying the real world. The thing is, the virtual world and the real world are the same now, and so I think that's a good framework for this going forward. How that we will explore. And having said that, we're honored to welcome our first speaker today. Again, so sorry to make everybody wait. Andy Hooper. Andy is again CEO at Global E-commerce Experts, and he will talk about the essential steps for businesses to take to successfully expand across their domestic markets. In the past 24 months, Andy and his company has supported more than 2,000 sellers from outside the EU to launch their online businesses geared toward global markets. Andy will guide you through the 6 steps toward expansion and answer your questions about burning issues such as compliance, fulfillment, marketplaces, promotions, and much more. Andy, you have about 30 to 35 minutes to go. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Michael, and good evening, good afternoon to everyone, wherever you are calling from. I'm going to share my screen, so hopefully that's going to be smooth and it will just sync nicely. So let's just hope that works. So let's see if I can do that now and make sure, if Michael, you can just confirm that you can see my screen and we're all good. We get the thumbs up. There we go.
Great.
Perfect. So I'm going to apologize now. That's never a good way to start, is it? I normally do this presentation at about 1,000,000 miles an hour because there is so much to get through that it's going to be difficult to compress that and do that with a lot of pace and energy to give you the information you need. So I'm going to try and do that in the best way I can, whilst trying to remain slowly for the translators. So please bear with me. So as Michael introduced, my name's Andy Hooper and I'm the CEO and founder of Global E-commerce Experts. And we successfully expand e-commerce sellers into the EU. Now, I've been involved in e-commerce for about 12 years now. And I first started in e-commerce selling silicone watches that I bought from China, imported them into the UK, and then sold them on Amazon in essentially 2007, 2008, 9. And that was my first introduction to Amazon and the world of e-commerce. Now, over the past 12 years, I've done a huge amount in e-commerce, and our latest venture that we've been doing for the last 4 years successfully expands sellers into the EU. Now, what I'm going to go through is the 6 steps to launching externally. Now, that's cross-border. Now, you could use these 6 secrets if you are going into the EU, if you're going to the US, if you're expanding to India. The process is exactly the same. Take this process and this guide as a structure to give you the key fundamental blocks to expanding. And hopefully it'll be super useful and you're going to get a huge amount of information from it. So here's what we're going to cover: the 6 secrets, compliance, launching, promoting websites, and a couple of other bits. And at the end, as Michael said, there'll be room for a Q&A as well. And really, this is focused on those that are looking to sell cross-border. Now, I always think you've got several choices. Now, the first one is, a lot of our clients are based in the States or based from China. And the hardest way of doing it, if you want to sell into Europe, is to get there. And the hardest way is to do that yourself without any information. And for the 200 or so of you that are listening right now, you've taken that step because you want that information. And I'm going to give you all of that information. So the hard way is to swim, right? So you can swim your way across, or you can go by boat. Now, I don't know about you, but I know which way I would rather go and the time I would rather take. So what I'm going to give you is the boat. And I'm hoping that instead of you swimming across the Atlantic or wherever you may be coming into Europe, that you can do it in a bit of luxury, a bit of style, and you'll have this information that will help you. Now, I'm going to touch on Amazon markets. Many of the sellers we work with focus on Amazon. And the reason for that is it's the largest marketplace across Europe. And obviously Europe is 28, soon to be 27. I apologize now, out of Europe. And there are sort of a number of marketplaces that you need to consider. You've got the UK, Germany, France, Italy, Spain, recently the Netherlands, hence why I'm coming from Netherlands, where our new warehouse is, and Sweden. And all of these areas are areas where you can put your products and have real contact with people in the in the real world, I think, as we heard in the last video. And I think what's really, really important to say here is that all of these marketplaces are Amazon. There are lots of other marketplaces you need to consider, and every country has its own very, very important ones. But what I'm going to go through with you today is the success pathway. We call this the Global E-commerce Experts Success Pathway. And the reason for that is that when we work with our clients, we do it step by step in order for them to do this completely successfully. Absolutely key. You do one step at a time to make sure that you do it. Now, you will be able to take this structure, and let's say you're currently selling in Georgia. You'll be able to use this to go to the UK, to Germany, to India, to the United States. Some of the information may need to tweak, but the process will be the same. Now, we've successfully expanded over 2,000 sellers now into the global markets. Whilst we have a key focus on Europe, we can obviously help in all of those other marketplaces as well. So I think you've heard enough about that. Now what you want to hear is, let's how to do it. So let's get in that comment box a whole load of yes, come on, Andy, let's get on with it. So let's go for it. So let's start with the very first step. And the very first step is compliance. And you'll notice that the white boxes are going to be filled in as we go. Now, compliance. There's 3 key areas you need to consider with compliance when you're expanding into a new market. The first one, you need to make sure you're compliant from a financial point of view. Every country has a different process and a different system and a different way of doing things. So Europe, we have VAT. In the US, you have sales tax. There are other areas that have GST, gross sales tax. They're the 3 typical ones you will come across. The first thing to make sure is that you are compliant. Now, VAT in Europe is the key one. And the key thing to remember is wherever you fulfill your products from is where you need to pay tax, sales tax, VAT. That's the key thing to remember over that period. Now, the second thing is to make sure your products are compliant with the regulations, because we see many clients who want to bring their products from wherever in the world and sell them into a new location. Now, that's an amazing opportunity. As an e-commerce seller, you can sell your products anywhere in the world. And I think that's hugely exciting, absolutely amazing. But they must be compliant with the regulations in the country you're going to do that. Now, one of those things is to make sure your products are labeled correctly. Now, there are lots of different options, and depending where you are in the world will depend on what you need to do. But you need to make sure your labels are compliant with the regulations. And the third part in here is payments. When you are selling overseas, you need to make sure you're getting your cash. You want the money back in your bank. And there are lots of different ways to do that. So making sure you have a payment gateway at this stage is absolutely crucial. So that's the first step. We need to make sure we are compliant with the regulations. We have our VAT, we have our label products, and we have payments. These are the very first steps that you need to consider. And I'm not going to hone in on payments because I know you're talking about that in another webinar later on in this series. So compliance is the very first piece you need to consider. So you can now see we've filled in the jigsaw puzzle and we've filled in that first piece. So we're now compliant. We have VAT, we have GST wherever we are in the world. Our product is compliant and we have payments set up. Now, once we've done that, The next thing we want to do is get our products so people can buy them. And I think that is the absolute next crucial step. So the first thing to consider is your marketplace launch. Where are you going to launch your products? Where do your product need to be? What is the right marketplace? Where are they located? Because depending on where they are, depends on whether you do Amazon FBA, whether you use a warehouse. You know, there are lots of different options in order to make that process easy. The advantage of Amazon is that, for example, you could put your products into Amazon and Amazon could do all the warehousing for you. Whereas with some of the other marketplaces, that's much more difficult and you need another 3PL provider. But the key thing is to do the research to understand what marketplaces are the key ones for you and your product, and most importantly, where your customers are. And that's really, really important. So once you've then identified that, you need to make sure that your listings are translated in the right language. Now, obviously, if you're selling in Amazon, you've got the UK, Germany, France, and many other countries. And it's really important to make sure that all of those are translated in the right language. So obviously we've got a Russian translator. Hopefully I'm going slow enough for you. So I hopefully that's all going well, because my Russian is very poor. I do apologize. But, you know, if I was to put a product on a marketplace in Georgia, for example, you know, the translation would have to be correct. I wouldn't really want to use Google Translate, although Google Translate will get you started. Okay. And I think that's key to say. The other thing to think about here is shipping. How are you going to get your products from where they are to the location they need to be in? And I think, again, that is really, really key. And what I need you to do is think about how you're going to get that product to where you need it to be. And I think that's really, really important. So in this area here, we're launching the marketplace when we're shipping our products. Now, you may want to start with one marketplace. You may want to start with a number of them. But I think the key thing to say is that you need to have them in just start simple and start easy. So one of the questions is, what does Amazon FBA mean? I thought that may come up. Amazon FBA is fulfilled by Amazon. FBA basically means putting your products in Amazon's warehouse in the UK, in Germany. And I think that makes life a little bit easier. And if you're selling cross-border, that makes it really easy for you to do. We have warehouses all over Europe, you know, so you can find an additional provider that can help you. But, you know, to start off with, Amazon makes that easy. Like, why wouldn't you? So that's the next step. So you can see we're now starting to fit in that puzzle with compliance. You know, wherever you are in the world, you've got the compliance. Wherever you are in the world, cross-border, you want to launch in that marketplace. The third step is to promote your product, because it's all very well putting it on the shelf, but you need to get people to see that. And it's really, really key that people get eyes on your product. Now, there's lots of different ways to do that. On Amazon, you can do pay-per-click ads. Google search engines, you can do many different types of advertising. You need to think about social traffic. How can social media help you and drive traffic to your products? Depending on the platform you use, different promotion options are going to be available to you. But the most key thing out of all of the promotion is sales velocity. Getting sales velocity for your products to drive the velocity and sales volume is absolutely key. So that's the third step. So you can see we've got compliant, we've launched in the marketplace, and then we've promoted our products. Now, when you're expanding in Europe, you can use marketplaces. And using marketplaces is a great way of starting the process. The advantage of using those is a lot of it's already done for you. But in order to be successful, the most successful e-commerce sellers don't rely on marketplaces. They rely on their own website as well. So what you need to consider is, do you have your own e-commerce store? You know, something like Shopify, build it on a platform called Shopify. I'm sure many of you will have heard many things like that before, but you want to build your own website, but you only do this once you've done the different stores in different marketplaces. And the reason for that is that you can prove the model. You can make sure it's going to work before you create your own website. Because when you create your own website, you want to build your own list. And what I mean by that is that when you sell on Amazon, for example, Amazon owns the customer. When you sell on your website, you own the customer. So when you bring out a new product, you can send an email to your client to say, hey, we've launched a new product. Here's the information. That's perfect. That's a really great way of doing it. As well as on Amazon, you can't do that. And that's a real shame. So I think that's a great thing to consider. Now with the website, there's lots of different options. You need to build a list. You need to have a top 100 customers, Dream 100. You need to build the website. And that's the fourth step in the process. Because in order to succeed, you need your own traffic. And really at this point, you're starting to grow the different marketplaces that you can be in. Now, the next step is Pan-EU. Now, Pan-EU is actually a program run by Amazon. And what happens with that is you put your products into one warehouse and Amazon distributes that across Europe. Now, there's pluses and minuses to doing this, okay? So I don't recommend doing this straight away, and I recommend taking expert advice before you do that. But as you grow your e-commerce store, your e-commerce brand, what you're looking to do is get your products in the hands of as many people as you possibly can. And what you need to do is then consider fulfilling from different countries. With the compliance piece with VAT, especially in Europe, you can only fulfill where you're VAT registered. When you start be able to expand in all those marketplaces without having things in those countries. And that's really, really key. So the next step is Pan-EU or European fulfillment. And then the last step is you taking control, because many of you will have wanted to expand and you've got to this point and you're like, right, what's next? Well, the last step is fulfilling yourselves, because you can control the cost. You can control the product. You can control everything. And I think those 6 basic steps take you along a journey to give you everything you need. And when you're looking to pull all that together, you create a successful framework. Now, what I'd really like to hone in now on is how you make that happen. What are the key things you need to consider along that journey? Because many of you be like, okay, I've got a process. I've got a structure. You know, I can see how that works. What you really need to consider is how you do that. And as I said, there are different ways to do that. The easiest way is by you doing it yourself. The second way is you following this process and making it happen. The third option is you can get someone who does end-to-end solution like us or many other companies, and see how you can fit those together. And I want to just touch on that because I think the key thing is to make it simple. Expanding into a new marketplace, a new jurisdiction, a new location is really, really simple. It is really easy if you have the right support than the right advice. I'm going to, everything here you can get, and there'll be a link where you can go and get that more information out. We've done many, many topics on this. We've done webinars, we've done podcasts, we've done ebooks, lots of different things around this where we go into much more detail. So the key things for you to consider are the compliance. Get the compliance piece done first. That's the most important piece. If you need support with the VAT, you need support with the label compliance, then please get in touch with us. Yeah, I'm sure our details will be put here somewhere as we go through. And obviously we'd love to support and help you and advise you. We can advise on the marketplaces. You know, we can show you which the right marketplace for your product. The promotion, you know, many of you will have be along your journey in a different way. And it's important for you to be able to identify where's best for you. You know, it's all I could say, we can do here, here, and here, but many of you will understand your product better than I. And you will then be able to identify what those marketplaces are. And that really shows you where we are. So global e-commerce experts, we can support you with an end-to-end solution to make that happen. Because when you're expanding into a new market, you want someone that can do that for you easily. But this is how to do it. You know, this is straightforward. It's really easy. Please use the framework as a guide to get you along the journey. And really, it is as simple as that. You know, really, there are things to consider. You know, if you're based in Georgia or somewhere else and you're looking to get into where do I start? What is the best way? Our number one options right now today is to be registered in the UK and one other European country, ideally Germany. You know, we've not touched on market size, but the UK and Germany account for 2/3 of all sales in e-commerce. So if you're going to launch and be anywhere, you probably want to launch in the UK and Germany. However, you might also want to consider the US. The US has obviously got a massive market. The EU is about 80% of the US market. So if you was to sell 8,000, 80,000, 8 million, then, you know, that would be 10,000, 10 million in the US because the market's that little bit bigger. And really, it's straightforward. You can get a link to the presentation here, and I know that it's going to be sent round afterwards as well. So please let us know. Now, I know we're coming to the end of the time slot we had, and we're going to open up for some questions in a moment, hence now. So let's open that up. I've gone through that and tried to stick to the time as best I can. I've tried not to rush it. I could go on this subject for another 2 hours. So I think the best thing is let's have some questions and let's answer those questions, Michael, if you agree.
Yeah, absolutely, Andy. And thank you so much for that. We have quite a few really good questions. Obviously, in the chat, so far most people have been asking about shipping and things like that. But I think that's actually something we should save at the moment, maybe for Katarina, because I think they're asking a lot about, for instance, shipping within their own country. But speaking of shipping, I think this is it's a good way to segue into a good question for you, Andy, our first question. And that is, especially considering the region or considering people that are new to e-commerce, when someone has limited financial and human resources, how do you identify where to expand to first? And what is that kind of decision criteria?
Yeah, I think that the simplest steps are to look where your products that you're already selling is already being sold, or a similar product is already selling. And the reason I say that is because you can identify and look at the market and see what other people are selling and get a gauge on the volume. And again, the reason I say that is because, there are many softwares that you can get that can give you that information. So you can use some tools, some software that'll show you what's being sold where, whether that be the UK, whether that be Germany, whether that be the US. But you have to take it as a bigger picture to look at and see where's going to be the most cost effective from a shipping point of view, from a tax point of view. There are lots of considerations outside of just, will my product sell there? Because, you know, it's okay if the product sells there, but if you've got to pay VAT, you've got to pay shipping, you've got to pay everything else, sometimes that might not work out right. So you need to make sure you have a solid budget analysis that really focuses on whether your product's going to succeed, and focus on perhaps where there's a gap in the market, focus where, you know, maybe lots of people are already selling it, maybe. Depends on the product. Hopefully that helps, Michael.
No, that helps a lot. And that also reminds me of something that you were saying before. Well, actually, a key point of your presentation is that there are these 6 factors that we have to take into account. And so one thing that you just said that made me think of is promotion, for instance. How, you know, where can you promote the product at? Where can you promote your services? And thinking about it, I think, holistically is really important. It's not just how can we grow, but it's also how can we grow in a sustainable way, in a way that actually connects to what we're doing. And with that, I think that actually brings us to a really good segue to another question, which is kind of when we're talking about resources and required and whatnot and that sort of thing. What kind of resources, and whether material or human, are actually needed to facilitate cross-border expansion?
Yeah, it's not something you should take lightly, because there is a time and investment you need to make in making that happen. It depends on where you are in your e-commerce journey and how far down the road you are. So, you know, if you are just starting out and you are just looking at the products you want to sell, you know, testing that to start with is going to be the right way to go. I wouldn't necessarily rush into selling my products all over the world, but I would look at seeing, okay, where is my product going to be sold the best? Where are more people buying things online? And then you need to look at the resources needed. And the biggest resource you will need is time. The time to invest in making it happen. The time to learn what's the right thing in that marketplace. Now, obviously, you can fast track all of those things by bringing people in with expertise to help you. But all of those things come as a cost. So there's always a trade-off between time and cost. Your time is relatively free because it's your time and you're just giving up something else. And I'm not saying it's free because you have to earn money, right? But, you know, if you bring someone in, you need to pay for that. So there's always an offset in time versus money. And if you want to fast track that and do it quickly and be successful from day one, then you pay lots for it. If you want to learn and take your time, knowing that you are going to make some mistakes, it will take much longer, but you might not have the time, the money to invest. So therefore, that's the trade-off. And really, the key thing is time and the education. And you know, if you've got a team of you that can do it, then great. But most people we work with are typically 1 to 5 employees at the most. And that's where we get involved, because it's really important for them to do it in another way.
Thank you very much for that, Andy. And I mean, to me, well, there's a couple things here. I mean, we're getting some really good questions from the audience. And again, thank you, attendees, for putting these questions in. Please make sure that you put them on the Q&A, just as a very, as a practical matter. It's just easier for me to follow that way than in the chat as well. But we have two good questions here that I would love for you to answer before we close this part of the webinar. One is that one participant, Archil, asked a really good question. You were mentioning registering in the UK and Germany. And what kind of registration do you mean? How does one go about that registration process? So that's one question. And then the second question is from Tatia, and it's also the one that I wanted to finish with, which is essentially, what do you see as the main challenges in cross-border trade, especially as it relates to small and medium enterprises, and even more particularly, those that are working in, especially the ones that are relevant to this webinar, such as food, apparel, textiles, and handicrafts, basically those kinds of things that can be shared that way. So can you just take those two questions?
Yeah, so depending on your product will depend on what needs to be registered. But typically, you as a business need to be registered in one form or another. So for example, you take your Georgian business and you register it for VAT in the UK and Germany. You do not need a new business. It's the easiest way of doing it. So you register your business first. So you've already registered in Georgia, then you just become VAT registered in those two locations. And that's by far the easiest way of doing that. Now your product, dependent on the product, will depend on what needs to be registered. If you have a food, it would need to be registered with the Food Business Operators License across Europe. If you are doing apparel, it really does depend on the product where it needs to be registered. And different countries have different options. So for example, food in the UK, if it's a food supplement or a food, doesn't necessarily need to be registered anywhere. But in Italy, it has to go through the Ministry of Food. So there are different options in different countries. So there's no one answer. And I think there was another question, where do I find out that information? Well, there are two options. One, you go to the government website of that country and search it and see what you can find. And typically that's where most of the information is. Now, sometimes that's easier to find than other times. Or the other option is you get in contact with someone like us who can guide you through that process. Yeah, obviously there's a way up between coming back to time and investment again. You can do that yourself and spend time looking for it on the government websites, or you might want to invest in a small amount of cash for someone to do that for you. Again, it's a way up that you have to decide that's right for your business.
Is it worth? I'm sorry, Andy. Is it worthwhile to also look maybe at chambers of commerce as well in countries?
So different companies have a chamber of commerce in Netherlands, where I am today, is different to a chamber of commerce in the UK. So a chamber of commerce might mean one thing in one country, but not in another. So the best place to start is the government websites. So the UK government is .gov.uk. And you can go to that website and look for food standards, food labeling. What do I need? So that's, and then again, Italy's Ministry of Food. You wouldn't really look for the Ministry of Food, maybe not. But you start with the government website, and then you can go from there and look at, selling into the EU, cross-border selling on all of those websites. Use Google Translate to translate it into the right language, and then put it into the government website. It won't be perfect, but it'll be a good starting point, rather than trying to do it in your native language on a foreign website. Doesn't work. Okay, so that's the first part about the product and registering. The second part, what are the main challenges? I think that probably summarizes it. The main challenges is identifying whether your product can be sold, is compliant with the regulations, and getting compliant. Because once you've got that piece done and your product can be sold and is compliant, Well, whether you ship from Georgia to Netherlands or Georgia to the US or Georgia to the UK makes no difference. Like whether you're shipping from Georgia to Georgia, it doesn't make any difference. So the shipping part, the logistics, whilst is all difficult, doesn't really matter. It's making sure that the compliance piece is the biggest challenge, and it therefore is that piece doing right. So hopefully that answers that, Michael. Do you think?
And Andy, that was perfect. I think we can end your segment right there. And I really appreciate you. We appreciate you being here, for sharing so many interesting insights and useful insights as well. And I will also invite you, Andy, if you have time or if you're interested, there are still some really good questions in the Q&A. If you would like to, write out a short answer to any of them that you feel comfortable doing, we invite you to do that. Thank you again for your time. And with that, everyone, I would like to go ahead and move to our second guest, our second speaker for the evening. And that is, it's my pleasure now to introduce Ekaterina Ramishvili, Kato for short, so I'll just say Kato, who is the founder of Kisa Bags and an e-commerce specialist. Kato will share her inspiring story about her cross-border expansion from Georgia to global markets. With only $80 US in seed capital, Kisa Bags is now among the top 3% of sellers on the e-commerce site Etsy after a relatively short but challenging and exciting period of 3 years. So just with 80 USD in 3 years, you're now one of the top 3% of sellers. So that's absolutely incredible. And
thank you so much, Michael.
Of course. And Kato will be sharing how she runs an online-only store from Georgia across borders. So I think now a lot of these questions that we've been getting about kind of specific, especially to Georgia, I think we'll be able to address them at the moment. So I think Kato, if it's fine, we can go straight into it. Everyone, this is just going to be a relatively casual interview kind of process as opposed to a formal presentation. And so, Kato, I think the first place that we should start with is to just tell us a bit about you and Kisa Bags. What is the product you're selling? Where are you selling it? How did you start? And we have quite a few other questions here, but let's just start there. Tell us about you.
Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, I'm really glad to take part in such an amazing opportunity to share my story and take even a tiny bit and take a tiny bit of part for someone else starting an e-commerce site. Because for me, it honestly changed everything. Because as you have mentioned before, when we started, we only had $80, and it was kind of 2.5 years ago. So yeah, we didn't have much of an investment, and it was really hard to kind of expand even in our local market, because in order to sell goods in Georgia, you better have a shop at least, so you can have customers and promote your shop. So I was selling at home because $80, obviously, you can't do much. But we had enough money to buy one leather piece, I think, and made our first design. It was a kind of prototype. So we always knew that the design of Kisa bag, by the way, we sell bags. I forgot to kind of introduce myself. We sell handcrafted, unique leather bags made in Georgia by unique Georgian design. Kisa stands, as a lot of our Georgian participants would know, Kisa is the same as poach in Georgian, and it kind of originated in 11th century in Georgia, and it's very ancient, very interesting product which we decided to bring back, but kind of do a lot of alterations to it, make it more convertible, more versatile, and yeah, kind of we completely changed it, but the main piece of the design stayed the same. So yeah, that was our idea, but it was really hard to promote it in Georgia because of lack of space, and especially because the prices to rent a place were really high back then as they are now. So that's when I decided that either I would just close our shop and just stop doing whatever I'm doing, because selling from home was really frustrating, or I would kind of like try and get to the next level, which would not require me to have much of an investment, but would be as efficient. So that's when I kind of started just like looking for like answers, and e-commerce and Etsy was the first e-commerce platform that I had my eyes on, because a lot of my foreigner friends were selling on it. So I kind of tried to do some digging. I kind of like, I had 6 months to study the website and self-optimization, and what products were doing well, what were the good sellers, popular sellers doing that I could implement in my shop. So that's, I think, what is really important. And also, as Andy mentioned, time is really, really important with e-commerce, especially when you're starting out. Because I remember I put all my time to this project because I was so dedicated to it. I really wanted this to work out, though I never thought it would just turn out like this. But I kind of hoped. So I put all my time, all my effort into this little project. And the best thing with Etsy and e-commerce in general, I think, is that whatever time you put into your shop, it always pays out. So it's like a long-term investment, which is basically your time and work. So anyone can do it if they just spend time researching and like learning about new shops and like implementing the strategies that they see and like on other shops. So that's what I started. I started to kind of look for leather bags. I started to learn from my competitors. And I noticed that the companies who had like better pictures, nice descriptions, like about me section was really interesting and artsy. I noted that they had a really high engagement, and they had a lot of customers and nice feedbacks. So that's what like I pointed out at that moment, that I obviously have to have nice pictures. So luckily for me, I had a really nice camera, which I always recommend to either rent or just borrow, because there are a lot of sellers right now on Etsy, and yeah, in order to just stand out, you need to do everything you can to be like on top. So yeah, good quality pictures and like positioning your product on e-commerce platforms to be like desirable and to, I don't know, just I basically my main reason, I just wanted people to really want my products, if you know what I'm saying. I just wanted them to look at the pictures and say, I gotta have this. So they're basically that's
well,
what I
Kato, I
tried.
mean, it makes sense. I mean, one thing you said is that you were like looking at your competitors and really gathering intelligence of the
Yeah.
market and whatnot. But in many ways, in some ways, and perhaps I'm being overly optimistic here, they are competitors in the sense that they're competing with, you know, potential customers for their money. But you also have a unique story. You have a unique product,
Yeah,
one
yeah,
that brings. It's not just a bag. It's not just another bag. It's
yeah,
something that is cultural. It's something that is rooted in your own
exactly, yes.
life. And so you're bringing at the same time your unique perspective into the market, but at
Yeah,
the
so
same
that
time
was,
learning from
yeah,
them how to do it in a better way,
sure.
I think.
That's our niche. I was trying to have my niche, as you said, on the like front page, like everyone could know like what they're buying, like what history our bag like has. It's not, as you said, a regular bag. So that's a huge part of Etsy is marketing. But it's like digitally, people don't have the opportunity to come to your store and experience everything nowadays. So you have to make everything you can to make your online store like your physical store. So for me, every picture that was on the front of my store and every listing had to match. My story was on the front page with all the pictures of our workshop, which we were able to afford thanks to Etsy and Shopify as well. We have now 3-floor, very cozy, very inspirational workshop, which I make sure to advertise so that people have a feel of a real workshop when they enter my page. So that's something to think of, what niche your product has, your company has, and kind of just try to digitally reinforce it on potential customers. That's what I think is different.
And where did you learn this, by the way, aside from just your own research? Do you have a background in business or any commerce or anything like that?
Yeah, actually, I have a business administration degree, and that really helped a lot in terms of marketing. But also, I studied this platform I've been studying it for 3 years now. So degree is completely different. Background is like secondary thing. The first thing is the motivation and I think the desire to learn this unique platforms. And also Andy mentioned that on whatever platform you choose to have an e-commerce site on, Amazon, eBay, Etsy, all the other stuff, Amazon Handmade, you just should not put all your eggs in one basket, basically. And that's what everyone is saying. You have to have your own Shopify website as well. And that's what we've started doing a year ago. And now our sales from Shopify are almost like Etsy's, though Etsy has much higher traffic. So that's something I've never actually thought that standalone website would have such traffic. But I've noticed that a lot of people are coming on from Google search engines. So we have like a lot of points of sales integrated in our Shopify store, and yeah, all the social media and Google are working really well lately. So yeah, I'm really excited for that as well.
Well, this brings up a good question, and I mean, there's all kinds of ways that I could go here. I mean, given the time constraints, unfortunately, we won't be able to go to all of them. But I want to talk about especially two things, and that's, well, one is market strategy and kind of, how do you identify your target markets, and ultimately, how do you drive traffic to your store? But then also I want to get into so that's a very kind of technical question. You can say like, well, it's this way and that way, and feel free to answer that. But then also think about this, that I also want you to think about kind of, if you could go back 3 years, knowing what you know now, kind of what would you do differently? And you can also apply that same question to marketing strategy and how you drive your traffic. So I'm curious how you would take that package.
That's a good one. Yeah, really good one. So I actually really love questions. So thank you for a good question. So the basically targeting on Etsy is quite different than on Facebook, on Google, or any other platform. You don't have as much options with choosing your exact target like you have with Facebook and Instagram ads. This happens by applying a different keywords and tags to your listings, so that you kind of give direction to your SEO, search engine optimization, so that keywords and tags target that specific kind of niche that you want to come to your website. But mostly it's not really about the niche. I mean, you do have a segment ideally, and you kind of position your brand to the segment through photos, through keywords, through what kind of person do you have in your pictures, how old is your model, and like kind of so that customers could relate to that person and just like think, oh, that's for me because it looks so nice on this like lady, or whether it's for men, for women, you can basically see it in pictures. But mostly keywords target specific products. So if someone is looking for a leather bag, in my case, all they have to do is just write that keyword. And because my listings are already popular and we have sold more than, I don't really remember it together, but more than like 3,000 bags for the past 2 years. So that's why my shop will come up on the first page, then on the second page as well. So some of my listings are all over the place. So that's mainly the targeting. You have to target by keyword. So you have to think not really about the customers, but about the bag about the product your ideal customers would search for on this system. So yeah, and the second question was, what would I do differently? So that's an easy answer. I would do nothing differently, because I took my time to learn this. And yeah, if I came back, like if I had a time machine and I could go back 3 years and just tell myself this, and this, I still would not be able to implement all these things, because they take time. Like we've developed a lot of different designs through this time, which I would not be able to do in a week. But yeah, of course, if someone who knew this platform and how SEO works would just explain to me, and he or she would save me like 6 months or a year of work.
Well, everyone though, yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, the beauty of
that's what I
hindsight is
do.
incredible. Yeah.
That's what I do for some small businesses, and I really like doing it, because sharing my experience like helps someone else do the same thing I did, but maybe a bit faster. So that's a good thing.
Well, I just want to come to kind of a final question for you, and I want to base it actually on something someone just a participant, Natia, just shared in the chat, and she was just asking, how can I register on Etsy? She makes homemade accessories. Is the registration process free? This really leads me to think about kind of the challenges that you faced when in terms of the business, getting it set up, thinking about cross-border cross-border commerce activities that you've had to deal with. A couple of things. First of all, think about, like, in terms of the challenges that you've faced, and something that Natia is asking in terms of how to register. Is there kind of a guide or kind of a go-to resource that people can look to help them with some of these more, let's say, more basic tasks or the basic things of how to set up? So that's one question. But number two is that thinking about your own challenges, what have those biggest challenges been for you, and how did you overcome them? And especially think about these things that you didn't know, kind of how to get that information. Yeah, it's a big question.
Okay. So the technical aspects of Etsy is usually registration, payment methods, and shipping, which a lot of people are having trouble with just because they think it's hard, but it's actually really simple. The registration and shipping now, I mean, from my perspective now, is the easiest part of Etsy, I think. Registration is quite simple. Unfortunately, I don't have a source. I kind of read all over the place from Google at the time, because whenever I don't understand something, I just Google it. So yeah, and there are a lot of information on English and on Russian as well. Also, I'm currently filming webinars as well in Georgian, so that's something to look forward to. This information will be available soon, and I'm kind of gathering together all the questions that people usually have when working with me, and I'm doing like from the scratch, how to set up Etsy and sale optimization from scratch. And yeah, there will be a lot of series, and it will be like everything you need to know, including shipping as well. Yeah,
that's great. Actually,
a lot
many. Oh, sorry, Kato.
No, please.
I was just going to say, so many people have been asking about shipping.
Yes.
Can we just take 1 or 2 minutes and just walk us through the process? What do you do?
Okay.
I have the bag
you
that we just made.
You should write it down.
No, we have the bag that we just made. How does it go from you or your warehouse or the production to the customer? Walk us through that process.
Okay, so I receive an order from Etsy or Shopify where it's specifically written the address of the recipient. So it's quite easy. You already know your address, and now you know the second address. So all you have to do is package it to ensure maximum safety during transportation, because it takes a lot. It takes a lot of rides for a package to arrive to foreign country. And usually if you're selling through Etsy, it will be USA, because most of Etsy's customers are American, and though our customers, like 99% are American as well. So you have to package it nicely, but also to ensure that it doesn't break, it doesn't like get scratches or anything, because I've seen some packages, yeah, that in terrible shape. So we've kind of developed all this system in place, how to ensure the safety. And then we go to, we have a contract with Post, with our local post office. So we have all the necessary papers, invoices. If you go to your local post office, they will actually give you instructions on what you have to fill up until you'll be able to have a lot of like, you have them until you'll be able to have all these papers and all these documents at your workshop. It's actually quite easy. All you have to do is just bring your package to your local post office, and that's how I started. So there are a lot of like weight factors that determine the price of the package, and you have to always ship it with tracking code, tracking number. That's one of my main suggestions, because a lot of packages get lost otherwise. So yeah, tracking is also very easy. There are a lot of websites you can track the package of your customer, and you have to provide this tracking code to your customer as well. So that's the first part. You just package your product and just go to the post office and let the post office employees help you with the rest. Most likely, you'll have to just fill out the forms, how the employee will kind of advise you to. So that's quite easy. And then they will ship it, and all you have to do is just track it. So there are also a few different companies who ship from Georgia, and there are a lot of different ways to ship it. We have standard shipping, we have expedited shipping, we have companies who ship to Europe, we have the companies who ship to US. So that's something you have to just do your research on, or just, I don't know, contact me for it for later. So other thing, what you have to take into consideration is the price of the shipping. I would advise you to kind of go to the post office before you receive an order to determine the price and include it in your product cost. So you'll have the opportunity to do the free shipping, because free shipping is the one thing that helped us most 2 years ago. It just the sales were up drastically because they also advised us to do so, and looks like customers really doesn't like a shipping cost. Who knows?
No, I completely understand, and
You
it
can
seems
have it in your product though, so yeah.
And there are so many even more good questions, and really granular ones, good ones about, like, for instance, export taxes, how you overcome that. I can say in Serbia, for instance, one of the biggest problems that we have as relates to e-commerce is that there's so many duties and customs taxes and whatnot that are put on things coming into the country.
The good thing about Etsy specific platform and Shopify as well, that it actually includes that first tax that some of the US customers pay as well. So it's included in your bill, and then you automatically pay to Etsy, and then Etsy pays to, so it's quite easy. It saves you a lot of time. And then if the product is expensive and above the limit, in some European countries, that limit is quite low, then customers pay the rest. So Etsy also has a small announcement that says that sellers are not responsible for any additional taxes and VAT costs. So yeah, that's a good thing. You don't have to like worry about anything.
Thank you so much for Kato, and it's really enlightening too, just to see how when you can work with a platform, especially one that's established like this, there's so many. You just have to be familiar with the policies, with how things work. As you said, do your research, do it as much as you can, especially if there's a localized language in Georgian or Russian, for instance, or something else. This has been so insightful, and I feel like I'm sure everyone here could agree we could go on like this for a long time. I know it's late, everyone, so thank you so much. Thank you so much, Kato and Andy, both of you, for joining us, for being here, for your time and effort. And you know, as you can see, there's a poll that we just launched, and we really appreciate that most of you have found this webinar to be interesting, to be useful. We invite you, of course, to the next. I just want to kind of, from at this point, just go ahead and close it. We're coming to the end of our time. Once again, thank you, Kato. Thank you, Andy, so much for your time and your insights and your advice here. We of course thank you to thank you attendees, everybody here that is working hard to get over, to really overcome the challenges that new retail environments pose, and especially that COVID-19 has posed on everyone's businesses. We recognize that there's a lot to overcome. And so thank you for being here. Thank you as well to your organizers, especially the E-commerce Association of Georgia, to all of our partners at USAID or USAID. Sorry if I think I'm saying it perhaps the old way. Of course, to Georgi and to Miriam, who helped organize this, and especially to our translator. Thank you so much for the great work that you're doing. Just again, these webinars were brought to us by the E-commerce Association of Georgia and supported by USAID Edge, USAID Zarda, and USAID Economic Security Program. This was the first webinar of the series of 5. The webinar was recorded and will be uploaded on YouTube and shared on Facebook with Russian subtitles in the coming days. The next webinar is coming on Thursday, 10 December at 21 Georgia time, so 2100 Georgia time, 9 p.m. Georgia time, which is UTC +4 for anybody that's not in the Caucasus. And it will be dedicated to global online marketplaces, very much like what we've heard a little bit about today with Amazon, Etsy, etc. Registration is not required for those who have already been registered. You will automatically receive an invitation. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, you can reach out to us on Facebook or at the following email address. Thank you all so much for attending. Have a wonderful evening. Stay safe and well, and we'll see you on Thursday.